Welcome, my friends, to Pop Culture Fridays. I'm your host, as always, Troy. This week, coming to you live from a rest stop in Minnesota. Where else? Beautiful rest stops in Minnesota, by the way. I am in the middle of a road trip, a mobile quarantine, if you will. Last week, I went to southwestern South Dakota. Beautiful state. Doesn't get enough credit. Should get credit. Beautiful mountains or canyons or Badlands or Mount Rushmore or Crazy Horse. All kinds of beautiful things happening there. I've never been before. Very impressed. One of the places I went to, someone took me to a ghost town, Owanka, South Dakota, and I had a bit of an experience there. Took a little bit of processing, a little bit time. I needed a little bit of time to absorb it. You know, I've seen a lot of abandoned houses before. See Detroit, but in that setting, in the remoteness of everything, and to see those houses and the town and the abandoned feeling around it. Pretty I don't know, I don't want to say moving, but it was an experience that I can't quite get out of my mind. And there's another reason for it, which was I'm reading a book by Tony Robbins called Awake the Giant Within, and I think I may have drawn a parallel here. Maybe. So I actually visited Owanka a second time on my way back to the great smoky, sugary Midwest, but check your sound, people, before you're done recording for the day. Check your sound. So I'm reading this book, and I am on this chapter where it talks about beliefs and how they have the power to create and the power to destroy. And I think I may have stumbled upon, or I'm still thinking about, some sort of parallel between what I found in that book and what I experienced in Owanka, South Dakota. So let me read you a couple of quick excerpts, and then I don't know what I just said there. Excerpts, and then there's a couple of examples that I can give, and then I think you'll understand what I'm talking about. So often we're seduced into believing that events control our lives and that our environment has shaped who we are today. No greater lie was ever told. It is not the events of our lives that shape us, but our beliefs as to what those events mean. The challenge with all these beliefs is that they become limitations for future decisions about who you are and what you're capable of. We need to remember that most of our beliefs are generalizations about our past based on our interpretations of painful and pleasurable experiences. Beliefs have the power to create and the power to destroy. Human beings have the awesome ability to take any experience of their lives and create a meaning that disempowers them, or one that can literally save their lives. Beliefs are not limited to impacting our emotions or actions. They can literally change our bodies in a matter of moments. I had the pleasure of interviewing Yale professor and best-selling author Dr. Bernie Siegel. As we began to speak about the power of belief, Bernie shared with me some of the research he'd done on people with multiple personality disorders. Incredibly, the potency of these people's beliefs that they had become a different person resulted in an unquestioned command to their nervous system to make measurable changes in their biochemistry. Wait for it. Let's see, where was I? Sorry. The result? Their bodies would literally transform before the researchers' eyes and begin to reflect a new identity at a moment's notice. Studies document such remarkable occurrences as patients' eye color actually changing as their personality changes, or physical marks disappearing or reappearing. Even diseases such as diabetes or high blood pressure come and go depending on the person's belief as to which personality they're manifesting. I mean, what? Do I need to read that again? You should rewind that 30 seconds. That should stop everybody in their tracks. What is happening there? He goes on to talk about a couple of another example of the mind over people. Beliefs even have the capacity to override the impact of drugs on the body. While most people believe that drugs heal, studies in the new science of psychoneuroimmunology, the mind-body relationship, that's going to be a big one, have begun to bear out what many others have suspected for centuries. Our beliefs about the illnesses and its treatment play as significant a role, maybe even more significant role, than the treatment itself. Dr. Henry Beecher from Harvard University has done extensive research that clearly demonstrates that we often give credit to a drug when in reality it's the patient's belief that makes the difference. One demonstration of this was a groundbreaking experiment in which 100 medical students were asked to participate in testing two new drugs. One was described to them as a super stimulant in a red capsule, and the other was a super tranquilizer in a blue capsule. Very Matrix. Unbeknownst to the students, the contents of the capsules had been switched. The red capsule was actually a barbiturate, and the blue capsule was actually an amphetamine. Yet half of the students developed physical reactions that went along with their expectations, exactly the opposite of the chemical reaction the drugs should have produced in their bodies. These students were not just given placebos, they were given actual drugs, but their beliefs overrode the chemical impact of the drug on their bodies. Stunning! So what does that, all of that, the mind-body relationship and the ability of people to override chemical drugs with their mind, or to actually change their diseases, their biochemistry, depending on which personality they manifest or create, which is basically, I think what he's saying is that your mind has the capability to change the physical part of you. What does that have to do with Owanka, South Dakota? Well, I thought about this for a while, and I started to think, okay, what he's talking about is an individual ability to create physical changes in your body. Let me tell you a quick story. 20 years ago, I had a sort of an injury, and I did some physical rehab. And I remember telling the person, who was very nice, the medical person who was, she was like massaging my forearms or whatever she was doing to, just part of the rehab. And I remember saying to her, one thing that's really helping me is yoga. And she said, sorry, I thought I stepped on something. And she said, that's great. I don't believe in that, but if that helps you, please go ahead. Which is very nice, but I kind of took that in a way as like kind of a dismission. What is this word there? It was dismissive of, not of my placebo effect or of what I'm doing, but it was a little bit dismissive of the idea of yoga or something outside of traditional medicine helping me. And it made me think, like, at that time and even today, why is it that we believe that stress can have a negative effect on the body, but that the opposite isn't true? Is it just because you can't necessarily prove one? So if we know that stress might cause heart attacks or strokes or who knows what else. But what about the opposite? The positive thinking, the ability to stay positive and be happy. What if that's curing cancer inside you? What if that's curing ailments that you don't even know about, or the ones that you do? Haven't you ever had a sickness or an illness that you started to convince yourself that you're just going to get over this, you're going to do it, and you're going to feel better, and you do. I don't understand why that couldn't also be part of the traditional medicine idea. But this isn't a video about the traditional medicine. I'm just saying that this ties into the idea that the individual can convince themselves of anything, basically. So what that has to do with Owanka, I think, is when you start to link those individual powers to the collective. So you have one person, let's say in Owanka, South Dakota, for example, it was sort of, I think that maybe got up to like 200 people in the early 20th century. It wasn't huge, but they had like a bank scandal, then the bank foreclosed, and then there was a school scandal, something like that, and then people slowly left, and now it's just a ghost town that people visit. But what about Minneapolis right now? It's kind of on fire. What about Detroit in 1967? On fire. I know this was different sizes. We're talking about microcosms and macros and all that, but what makes one town survive and another one not? Or what makes one town thrive even and another one not? Is it simply the belief systems, the ability to create and the ability to destroy between the collective, between the individuals that make up the collective? If one person let's just stick with Owanka, if you've got 50 people left in the town and everybody's fleeing, but maybe if you have one person who says, no, I'm staying and I'm going to make this work and I'm going to show you that we can do this and we can figure it out. Anybody who wants to back me up or believe in this, come with me. And they do it, and maybe Owanka isn't a ghost town. Maybe I don't visit there. It's those decisions in those moments that shape things differently for the future of a town based solely on their beliefs. Now, that's not to say that it's the fault of anyone in Owanka that they didn't stick it out. Things die all the time. But it just made me wonder about like the two things. One, about the difference between the individual power of belief to create and destroy, and then the collective one, which is like an aggregate of all those beliefs. And the other thing is how weird it is that the universe is so full of all these coincidences. Well, you know what? I don't even know that I believe in coincidences, but this ability to tie things together. I'm reading this book, and I'm taking a road trip to Owanka, South Dakota, or Rapid City, South Dakota, wherever, and all of a sudden they tie together. I bought this book way before that trip had even come into play. It doesn't make any sense to me how things tie together, or maybe I'm just making connections that aren't there. But it's to me it's interesting, and it just brings home the idea, given this quarantine, given the pandemic, given the time of the great beast, that the power of the mind is more important now than ever. One thing that also got me thinking was when I went to Owanka and when I went to the Badlands, is that this feeling of remoteness, this feeling of familiarity. What is the significance of being familiar, of being comfortable, of what we think of as comfortable? Or how does that affect us? Because I remember looking at the Badlands and Owanka and Mount Rushmore and Crazy Horse and all that, and thinking, these are so beautiful. I've never known these things. It's the first time I've ever seen them. How do I feel 80% happy and thinking they're beautiful, and 20% thinking this is unfamiliar? I don't know how to process this. Not as a bad thing, but just as an observation. And then I started to wonder, through the process of life and interactions and all that, like, is this the time that things change? Is this the time where things shift? Is it the moments of chaos where things, or the road less traveled, the cliched road less traveled, is that when things make a shift? Are we on the verge of a great shift? Or just am I on the verge of a great shift? I don't mean to project onto you, sweetheart, but is that what's happening here? I think to myself, okay, I'm in the Badlands and I'm thinking this is beautiful and all that, and I also think in the back of my head, it's not comfortable. I kind of want to go back to that couch, back to something familiar. But then I think, why? Why would I want that? Why would any part of me think that? I mean, there's a small part, of course, but I guess it's just that part of that comfort. We try to, even on the road here, I'm sleeping in rest areas, I'm sleeping in a tent, I'm sleeping wherever I can, and I'm trying to recreate this comfort, like making a bed. Like I built like a foot thing so that I could have a bed in my beautiful, adorable, cute little hatchback. Shout out to the Silver Fox. It's just makes me think about something that Joe Walsh said in a documentary. Of course, Joe Walsh, Plato, Aristotle, Joe Walsh. In the Eagles documentary on Netflix, which is 4 hours long, which I watched, you think at the time that you're living that everything is chaotic and things are crashing into each other and the universe is chaos and things are happening and you can't make any sense of it. You try to stumble through it. But when you go back and look at it, it looks like a finely crafted novel. It's hard to see it. If there's only a way you could sort of rise out of your body and look up and look down at yourself as like a Sims character, maybe you would see it, but you don't. And I think that's where this idea of the power of the belief comes into play. You have to just kind of maybe know and believe in yourself and allow yourself trust, the ability to trust yourself and the ability to believe in yourself and where you're going. Maybe. I think so. Well, that's all I have for you this week. You can follow me at Culture Fridays on Twitter, at Pop Culture Fridays on Instagram. thisiswhereyouare.com is the website. We also have a Patreon, Pop Culture Fridays. I hope you're doing well. Just hang on. We're going to get through this together. We will survive. I had this vision the other day that I was walking around to downtown. Everyone was spaced out accordingly. And then you heard a cheer in the distance, and then another cheer in the distance. And you started to think, well, it's a happy cheer, and these people aren't connected or with each other. What's going on? And everybody's coming up to each other, and then someone comes up to you and finally says, did you hear they found a cure? One can only hope.